Greetings, everybody. This is the Starving Martian, and it's been a while, but I'm back in style. And speaking of things that kind of come and go, here is Warlord of Mars Attacks, issue number 1 from Dynamite Comics. Alright, so if you remember a while back, earlier this year, we looked at, actually it was last year, wasn't it? We looked at Mars Attacks, issue number 1 from Dynamite. This is the latest comic book company to get a hold of the rights for Mars Attacks. And the hope, at least on my behalf, was that that would be an ongoing series, and that it would exceed what's been done in the past by Topps Comics and by IDW. But it seems like they're following the exact same pattern, which is put out a quote-unquote regular series that only lasts a few issues. In this case, I believe the Dynamite series only got like up to 5 issues. And now here we have Warlord of Mars Attacks. So it looks like what they're doing is just releasing a bunch of one-shots, mini-series, that sort of thing. This is the first issue of what's at least going to be a 3-part series. It's rated Teen Plus. And it is a crossover comic between Mars Attacks and John Carter, Warlord of Mars, as written by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Yeah, the same guy who invented Tarzan. This guy here also created John Carter, rather. John Carpenter, yeah. John Carter of Mars. Now, John Carter is a Civil War soldier who wakes up on Mars. He kind of gets beamed over there. And I'll be honest with you guys, I've never read the original novels. It's one of the things I always mean to get around to, but never did. I've also never seen the Disney movie, John Carter. So going into this, I'm kind of going in blind. I know a little bit about the world, but not enough to really say if these guys are doing a good job interpreting it or not. That being said, I do like this cover. At the comic shop I went to, they had like 4 or 5. There's variant covers, and I chose this one. It's like the Martian gore and the look of Mr. Carter here. He looks a lot like He-Man with sideburns. Kind of dark-haired He-Man. Got all them saucers in the background, and it's just a very nice cover. So, what about the comic itself? Well, it begins with Martians shooting a death ray, so that's always a good place to start. Get a little intro over here if you don't know who John Carter is, or if you're not sure what Mars Attacks is. Mars Attacks are, I don't know. However the grammar works. And we're treated to something I've never seen before, which is Mars Attacks Mars. This is actually kind of cool because in the John Carter series, there are various different kinds of Martians. There's different species on Mars. Some of them war against each other, and in this one we find that our beloved Martians are just one of many. And so these Martians are attacking the other Martians, and John Carter and his more humanoid-looking Martians with their nifty Rocketeer helmets, which I love so very, very much, are fighting back against them. And it's kind of a cool concept. I like the idea of Martians against Martians. You know, back in the Topps days, we did have, the Payeks and the Nards, and they were kind of in a political battle against each other. But to see these Martians actually physically attacking other groups of Martians is pretty cool. So here's John Carter of Virginia battling the Martians. Now, by the way, Zook Zuka, as you can see there, that's how Martians apparently say John Carter. We know because it's actually translated for us over here. So yeah, Zook Zuka is John Carter in Martian. So there you go. We added another phrase to our bit of Martian terminologies. And we can now say John Carter in Martian. So if I ever meet any of you guys in the street, I'll greet you as Zook Zuka, and you'll know who I am. Alright, and we see him running through a bunch of Martians with his sword. And some nice Conan the Barbarian style battle going on here. And you'll notice that the artwork in this particular book is a lot more realistic than in the previous Dynamite. Here's an example from issue number 1 of that series, and you see that was a lot more cartoony. And that's one of the cool things. One of the things I like about Mars Attacks is it can be cartoony and silly, and it can be serious as all heck. And either way, if it's written well, it works. So anyway, we do see Martian against Martian on this battle for Mars, and it does make it kind of unfortunate when we suddenly warp to Earth, and we're at a command center where a probe has been launched to Mars, and they're studying the Martian landscape, and you get to meet all these kind of boring characters. I'll be honest, this part of the book suddenly drags. It starts off with action and sword play and laser guns, and then they get a bunch of talking heads for a while before the Martians discover the probe and put an end to it. You'll notice these Martians, by the way, they say ack sometimes, and they'll use words here, like here we have a Zack ack, whack vack, tacky tack, which is fun to say. And it's a nice nod to the movie without being straight ack, 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 and just copying it. So that's pretty cool. And so the Martian destroys the probe, and that actually reminds me of the teaser trailer for the first Transformers movie, before we all knew how terrible that was going to be. And so we get Mars attacking Earth again. And while that's cool, and I do like this scene because, again, it reminds me of the movie, like when Mars attacked Vegas. And while that's cool, it's also something that we've seen like a dozen times already. And normally I wouldn't even notice, it wouldn't bother me, but when you start off with a premise of like Martians battling other species of Martians, and then just go to Martians zapping Earthlings, it is a little bit of a letdown. It's a little bit of a, yeah, been there, done that. So the issue ends without giving, well, with giving away, but it's not that much of a spoiler, with the revelation that there's someone or something in Arizona, somebody in stasis here, quite probably John Carter himself. How he got there, you'll have to wait and see. And there's a little blurb here for next issue, and issue number 3 is mentioned down here, right in the corner. So that's how we know they are planning at least 3 issues for this series. So I plan on sticking through. Now, I know I only covered the first issue of the first Dynamite series, but we're still not even done with the Topps comics, and we barely scratched the surface of IDWs. So it might be a while before we get to that, but you know, I hate to give too much detail while these things are still on the shelves. So I probably won't cover the next few issues for a while, but they'll be in your comic shops. Go out and find them if you can. It's a mixed bag. It starts off strong. It's got a lot of promise, and I'll be curious to see how this man who his only contact on Earth so far has been during the Civil War era. Suddenly, it looks like he's going to be on Earth in modern times fighting Martians. Will he still be using his sword? I don't know. We'll find out. Should be cool. So that's Warlord of Mars Attacks. I would have preferred if it just stayed on Mars, but we're going to see where it goes. I'm looking forward to the ride. Hope you guys are too. So this has been the Starving Martian. We'll talk to you later. But until then, remember, as always, to keep watching the skies.